In my life, I've heard many horrible words. Of course, some of them were directed at me. You're a single woman, you're a scumbag. But I've yet to hear an insult as bad as the one my brother-in-law used on me. I'm not going to let my brother-in-law's slanderous remarks go unchallenged. My name is Amy Smith. I am 38 years old, single, and working. Why do I have a brother-in-law when I'm not married? That's because I'm engaged. James, my fiancé, is 6 years younger than me. We met through a mutual friend and hit it off right away. I have a very hectic work schedule, and I often have to work on my days off. I met James in the midst of such hard work, and when I am with him, I could relax and spend time together. James is good at cooking and sewing, and a hard worker, all of which I am not. After we moved in together, he did housework and even cleaned my suit for me, which was extremely helpful. I am always sorry, I know you're busy too. I've reserved a table at a nice restaurant for my next day off, so let's have dinner together. It had become a habit for me to treat James to dinner like this, for the hard work he puts in every day, with the money I earn from my hard work. Don't worry about it. I can leave my job on time, and I'm not nearly as busy as you. Most importantly, I do housework because I enjoy it. James always says to me, "How are your family's plans for our upcoming meeting?" We had already met each other's parents shortly after our engagement, but we wanted to throw a dinner party for both families to get to know each other. James has one older brother, while I have two younger siblings. Instead of meeting at the wedding, both families suggested that we get to know each other beforehand. So we decided to bring both families together, parents and siblings included. "I'm sorry, but my brother can't come because of his work," James explained. "I know you're also busy with work, so please accept my apologies." "Your brother is a very talented lawyer, isn't he?" I asked James, who bowed his head. "I wish I could have met him, but if he's busy, then it can't be helped. We can meet at the wedding." In fact, I wasn't too worried, because I thought it was important for the couple and parents to get together, even if the siblings couldn't. My brother can be cold to people, so even if he does come, I'm worried that he might be rude, James said. He appeared tense. On the day of the party, my brother-in-law was, as it turned out, not present. James looked relieved that his brother wasn't there. My brother and sister were both there, and it turned out to be an enjoyable party. My parents-in-law and I had a good time, and my siblings seemed to be like James, which relieved me. It was a fantastic opportunity, and I only wish I had met my brother-in-law. The day came to an end with that in mind. I never imagined that when I met my brother-in-law later, I would think he was such a rude person and that it was a good thing I didn't meet him at the dinner party. My mother and I were at the university hospital one day. My mother wasn't feeling well, so she was referred to this university hospital for a thorough examination after visiting a clinic near my parents' house. Other than palpitations and dizziness, there was nothing to worry about, but I decided to take my mother to hospital in case anything happened to her before the wedding. My mother, who is in her mid-60s, appears young, but she could be diagnosed with a serious illness at any time. She had worried me by delaying marriage until she was in her 40s, and I felt I owed her for raising my brothers and sisters so well. "Why don't I pay for you to have a thorough checkup, Mom?" I suggested. I had never felt so strongly before. This is what I have been earning money for. I want to assist in situations like this because I can't take time off from my family. Because the test could not be completed in one day, we had to go to the hospital several times. The tragedy occurred during the second of several hospital visits. The university hospital was extremely crowded that day with long lines. My mother and I were waiting for a turn with a cup of hot tea in a space away from the waiting area where we could eat and drink. My phone then rang. It could be a work call. I left my tea with my mother and went to a location where I could take the call. It was indeed a work-related call. It was a call to check that I was not going to change my surname at work when I joined the family register. I returned to my mother after the phone call and I heard some yelling. What was she screaming at in the hospital? I hope my mother is all right. When I realized the yelling was aimed at my mother, I dashed over to her. My mother rose from her seat and bowed repeatedly to the man in the suit. Who is he? He was wearing an expensive-looking suit as well as a luxurious-looking watch and shoes. Pullback hair, full of pride. The man who is yelling at my mother looks like a debt collector. He didn't appear to be my mother's friend, so I inquired as to what was going on. Excuse me for interrupting, I said. Did my mother harm you in any way? The man shifted his gaze to me and examined me from head to toe. She placed a cup of tea or something on the seat, and when I sat next to her, it fell and stained my suit. What are you going to do? I have business after this. I examined his suit more closely, and it did appear to be slightly damp. I apologized sincerely. Let me pay for the dry cleaning. I tried to say, but the man was unconvinced and interrupted me, yelling even louder. The man shouting inside the hospital naturally drew a lot of attention. A few nurses came out, and a crowd quickly gathered. I'll let you off with a cleaning fee, the man said, perhaps realizing that the situation had evolved. Do you have any contact details? How can I contact you? He inquired. Oh no, I didn't have my business card. I always have on hand on days like this. A security guard called out to me. Are you all right? Is everything in order? Is there a problem? The gentleman clicked his tongue and tossed his business card at my feet. Make sure you call me, he said. There's no point in fleeing. I have a close relationship with this hospital, and I'm sure they will share your information with me. What on earth is going on? My mother and I are both sorry. I tried to fight back, but he took one look at my hand and said, You're single at your age? Women are said to have an expiration date, but you're not only expired, you're unsold industrial waste. You're like raw garbage, a single woman. He was rude once more. As I was about to respond to the insult directed not only at me, but at my mother, the man took off running to avoid being pursued by the security guard. What's up with that impolite demeanor? I'm furious. My gut was churning with disappointment over not being able to protect my mother and the rude man's comment. I bowed lightly to onlookers and security guards who had rushed to the scene out of concern and picked up the business card that had fallen at my feet. I was curious as to who the jerk was. I was perplexed as I read the name and title. So that's what all of this was about. I canceled the checkup and returned home, prioritizing my mother's mental health care. I'll never forget that guy. I'm sure I'll make him regret his rant against me and my mother. I went to the courthouse about a week later. Of course, it wouldn't be like in America, going to court over a stain on a suit. I saw a man I recognized walking toward me from the end of the main hall as I moved through the familiar halls, my heels clacking on the floor. I knew it. What should I say to him? I wondered. As I was thinking, he looked up at me as I passed him and said, "You're the trashy single woman from the other day, aren't you? You've got to be kidding me. What exactly are you doing here? This isn't the place for you." "Yes, this is the same man who assaulted my mother and me the day before." I wanted to say something harsh to him right now, but I have an evil side to me. Every day I think about how I want to completely destroy evil by using my strong sense of justice. "Oh, I'm very sorry about the other day. I believe you are Tom Dixon of the Honeywell Law Office." I brushed aside his rude outburst as I remembered his business card that had been thrown at me the day before. The man took offense and started talking about the suit incident, his mouth twisting in a nasty way. "I had an appointment with a client at the hospital after that," he explained, "and you embarrassed me." I don't understand how a trashy woman like you could stain someone's suit and then not call me back. Dixon worked as a lawyer. Of course, we happened to meet here today by chance. Then, because of his loud voice, I felt eyes on me from all sides. Lawyer Dixon began taunting me in a loud voice that people in the aisles could hear. I guess he wants to brag, even though I'd have to call security if this continues. There are many men like this in the legal profession. I was shaking my head, which irritated Dixon even more. "Mr. Dixon, what's with your loud voice?" said someone behind me. Someone approached me and asked, "Mr. Dixon, what's wrong?" When Dixon saw the man who owned the voice, he changed his tone and mumbled, "Oh no, this woman." As he took a business card from his card case, the man looked up at me and gasped. When I picked up his business card, it said, "Attorney Honeywell, partner at Honeywell Law Office." This man must be Dixon's boss and the firm's CEO. As soon as he realized who I was, he began shaking and bowing at a 90-degree angle to greet me. "Gosh, it's been a while," he exclaimed. "Dixon, my subordinate, has been extremely rude to you. Please accept my apologies." Then Attorney Dixon, who had no idea what was going on. "Mr. Honeywell, what's going on?" "What's going on, Mr. Honeywell? Are you familiar with this lady?" "This is the jerk who ruined my suit the other day and overcharged me for dry cleaning." Mr. Honeywell, who had turned blue, then grabbed Mr. Dixon by the scruff of the neck and forced him to bow. "Ouch! What exactly are you doing?" Honeywell spoke quietly to Dixon. "How dare you, Dixon?" "This woman is a prosecutor, and she's my former boss, Smith, who always wins every case she takes on." Lawyer Dixon was perplexed. He couldn't believe the single woman he'd called garbage was a prosecutor. "Yes, I am a lawyer. Since I was a child, I have been unable to overlook injustice, and I was torn between becoming a police officer and a lawyer, and I chose the latter. I became a lawyer because I wanted to bring criminals to justice, even if I couldn't catch them with my own hands. I wanted to bring the criminals to justice and judge them under the law. Now I work for the prosecution after being invited by a former colleague to advance my career. As a result, I am frequently in and out of the courtroom for work. By the way, Mr. Honeywell is afraid of me because I looked after him when he was a rookie. He's a serious man, but he's in trouble because the bond between a trainer and a rookie never fades." Attorney Dixon, who had come to a halt in shock, wanted to say something, but I wouldn't let him. "You've grown into a fine man, Mr. Honeywell," I said. "Mr. Dixon, I will pay your cleaning bill without delay. I apologize for being so busy with work. Is that okay, brother-in-law?" "Brother-in-law?" said Lawyer Dixon, his mouth agape. "No way, James's fiancé?" he said aloud as he froze. I looked up at the business card he had thrown at me the other day to see if I could figure out what was going on. This rude man was, indeed, my brother-in-law, who had missed our wedding due to work. As I watched my brother-in-law, I noticed his face turn pale. As a lawyer, you know that comments like, "A single woman is garbage," are considered insulting. I was prepared to pay for the dry cleaning, but your response was appalling. You can be sentenced to 1 year's imprisonment or a fine of no more than $3,000, or both. Which do you prefer? As I said this, I smiled. Attorney Dixon finally fell to his knees and bowed his high head, realizing that his position was in jeopardy. Please forgive me if the press finds out. I suppose assertive lawyers are more aware of the media. Sometime later, I had a successful wedding and now thoroughly enjoying newlywed life. James is now a full-time house husband, and I am more able than ever to devote myself to work for my family. My brother-in-law apologized several times to my mother and I and offered to settle the case. But I decided to ask him to write off the dry cleaning bill and forget about it. I could make the money on my own. My brother-in-law didn't attend the ceremony, most likely because he felt awkward. My brother-in-law's business has suffered significantly due to his attitude toward us, as well as complaints from other customers. I suppose bad deeds are exposed. I promised myself that I would protect this life so that we can continue to support each other.
Mommy! I heard my daughter's voice, filled with surprise and panic. In response, I desperately tried to hang on to my fading consciousness, but all my efforts were futile, and I fainted right in front of my daughter. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, after having been rushed to the ER. My daughter was there, clutching my hand tightly, refusing to let go. I must have given her quite a scare. I was filled with guilt, about to apologize when she spoke before I could. Mommy, the baby in your tummy says they don't want to get erased by Daddy. At her mysterious words, I held my breath in surprise. My name is Linda Williams. I'm a 27-year-old homemaker living with my husband Mark, who is 2 years my senior, and my 4-year-old daughter, Sarah. I used to work as a sports trainer until recently when I had to quit. The reason? I'm expecting our second child. I really didn't want to quit, but after my pregnancy was discovered, I started feeling unwell more often and had no choice but to leave. I was depressed after quitting a job I loved, but there were also good aspects. Up until then, Mark wasn't very helpful with housework or child raising, but he started taking the initiative for my sake. I'm worried about my health, but I'm glad that Mark is changing. At that time, I thought everything would be okay. Mommy, wake up! It's morning! When I woke up to Sarah's innocent voice, it was 7 a.m. The school bus for Sarah's daycare arrives at 7:30 a.m. I jumped up in a hurry. Shoot, Sarah, we need to get ready quickly. What's wrong? We overslept. If we don't hurry, the bus will be here. While brushing my confused Sarah and leaving the room, I realized that I hadn't seen Mark anywhere. He usually leaves around 7:15 a.m., so he should still be at home. Maybe he's downstairs. Maybe he's having breakfast. Although a little annoyed that he didn't check on us, I headed for the stairs. That's when it happened. I slipped, and I felt a momentary sensation of being thrown into the air. I'm going to fall! Instinctively reaching out for the handrail, I managed to grab onto it and prevent myself from tumbling down the stairs. Oh, that was close. I put my hand on my stomach immediately, but I didn't hit it, and it doesn't hurt. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Sarah, looking pale, rushed over. Mommy, are you okay? I'm fine, honey. Sorry for scaring you. Regaining my footing, I embraced Sarah. Then, Mark, who must have noticed the commotion, rushed over from downstairs. "What happened?" "I slipped and almost fell down the stairs." "Whoa, be careful." "I'm sorry, but it was like the floor was slippery." "What?" "And the floor seems to be cleaner than usual. I hadn't noticed until now, but the wooden floor in the hallway was sparkling, as if someone had polished it." Then Mark said in a flustered manner, "Oh, right. I waxed the floor last night." "Wax? Why would you do that all of a sudden?" "I noticed it while cleaning the floor, but I guess I got a little too excited. I'm sorry." "Oh, I see." I was surprised by the idea of him waxing the floor, which was something he had never done before. But he had been doing a lot of housework recently, so perhaps he had started noticing the little things. Once men start paying attention to details, they just can't stop, can they? Even though I found it a bit strange, I decided not to worry about it. A few days later, on a Sunday, Mark had to go to holiday work, so I decided to take Sarah to the park, just the two of us. Before, I would run around and play with Sarah, but I can't do that now. I watched Sarah playing on the swing. A water bottle Mark had prepared for me in hand. Who would have thought that Mark would start preparing things like water bottle for me? When Sarah was first born, Mark was so uninterested in anything to do with the house. It still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. He also had no interest in Sarah. So every time I say something to him, he gets grumpy. And coming home from work became later and later. The fact that he now prepares a bottle of water for me is still a shock. But I can't hide how happy it makes me. Thinking about this, and feeling a bit thirsty, I decided to take a sip of the tea Mark had prepared for me. Then, "Huh? Mommy?" After drinking about a quarter of the bottle, I suddenly felt dizzy and began to feel unstable on my feet. I grabbed onto the fence of the swing for support, but even then I could feel my strength fading, and it became increasingly difficult to stand. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Mommy. Hearing Sarah's surprised and worried voice, I desperately tried to hold on to my fading consciousness. If I faint here, I'll leave Sarah alone. But even with this thought, I fell right there while protecting my stomach. When I came to, the first thing that hit my eyes was a stark white ceiling. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was, but then I noticed the smell of disinfectant and the figure of a nurse appearing saying, "Are you all right?" I realized then that I was in a hospital. At the same time, I thought of Sarah. "Excuse me, Sarah, do you know where my daughter is? She should have been with me when I fainted." I sat up and asked the nurse. She said, "Ah," and seemed to understand immediately. Maybe trying to reassure me, she smiled at me. "She came to the hospital in an ambulance with you. She should be with your husband now." "My husband?" "He left work early to come here. He arrived a little while ago. He's such a caring husband." The nurse said that she would go and call them, and then left the room. Feeling relieved that Sarah was not alone, my head started to spin again, and I collapsed on the bed. Why, when there was no issue during my previous prenatal checkups? Was it because I moved around too much, or did I eat something bad? As these thoughts spun around in my head, I suddenly remembered the tea from the water bottle that I had drank just before I fainted. Come to think of it, that tea. Just as I thought about this, the door opened, and the nurse, a doctor, Mark, and Sarah came in. "Mommy!" "Sarah, I'm glad. I'm sorry for leaving you alone." "I'm okay, but what about Mommy? Are you okay, Mommy?" "Yeah, I'm all right now." As I patted the head of Sarah, who had rushed over to me, the doctor smiled next to me. In the end, it was decided that I would be hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. After a thorough examination by the doctor and the nurse, they left the room. Mark said, "I'll go buy a drink," and he also left. In the hospital room, it was just me and Sarah. Then, Sarah seemed a bit restless, and looked like she wanted to say something. "What's up, Sarah?"
Mommy, can you keep a secret from Daddy?
"Huh? Okay, but why?" Although I was wondering why, I nodded in agreement, and Sarah brought her face closer to me with a serious look.
The baby is saying that they don't want to get erased by Daddy.
Huh? I was momentarily speechless, unable to understand what Sarah was saying. Sarah then pursed her lips in dissatisfaction and spoke a little louder.
The baby is saying Daddy's being mean, and the tea in the water bottle.
At these words, I was taken aback, because I too had sensed an unusual bitterness in the tea from the water bottle. At the time of drinking, I thought maybe Mark had bought a different type of tea than usual and didn't give it much thought. But thinking about it now, I was hit by a terrible dizziness just after drinking that tea. I had a slight feeling somewhere in my heart that there might be some relation to the fainting incident. But what does it mean by the baby is saying? "Hey, Sarah." "I'm sorry I'm late. The cafeteria was crowded." Just as I was about to ask Sarah properly, Mark came back into the room. I swallowed my words in surprise, and Sarah seemed uncomfortable and buried her face in the bed. Mark looked at her with a puzzled expression. "Something happened?" "No, it's nothing." Well, whatever. I'm going home for today. I have to work tomorrow. Just rest up, okay?" Mark took Sarah's hand and left, but my daughter showed a momentary reluctance to leave. "Let's go home with Daddy today. Mommy is staying at the hospital."
Okay."
I can't help but feel uneasy about my daughter, who followed him without saying anything. I wonder if Sarah is okay. I was worried, but there was nothing I could do at the moment. I just had to make sure I could be discharged as soon as possible and crawled into bed. But I couldn't fall asleep easily, as Sarah's puzzling words kept coming to my mind. 3 days later, I was allowed to discharge. As my husband was working, my friend Kimberly came to pick me up. Kimberly was a friend from the same gym I worked at. She has been looking after me since I quit due to my health condition. "I was shocked to hear you had fainted, but you seem to be doing much better than I thought. I've been sleeping so well in the hospital that I feel much better. I'm glad. I was worried because you're pregnant." While having such a conversation in the car heading home, I felt a bit uneasy inside. I had been constantly feeling sluggish and heavy-headed, but the discomfort improved in just a few days. The only unusual things I had done during that time were taking a break from housework and childcare and eating a balanced diet in the hospital. Upon thinking that, I suddenly realized something. So that means I didn't eat Mark's cooking yesterday. I remembered there had been several oddities since Mark started doing housework. Aside from almost slipping on the wax, there were other things that bothered me. For instance, things were placed in spots where they usually aren't, causing me to trip. Or the time I was told the shower was ready, but it turned out that the hot water tank was empty and cold water came out. Such incidents occurred frequently, especially when cold water came out. I rushed to the hospital out of concern for the baby in my belly, as it was in the winter. Fortunately, there were no problems, but it was a really nerve-wracking event. Of course, I thought these were just mistakes due to Mark's inexperience with housework. However, reconsidering now, each of them seemed to be something that could lead to irreversible consequences if one step was wrong. "Linda, we're here." "Ah, yeah." Before I knew it, we'd arrived at the house. Seeing my silence, she looked at me with worry. "If you're feeling sick, you should say so, okay?" "Yeah, I will." "Well, you should rest for today at least. I'll pick up Sarah, okay?" "Thank you, I appreciate it." As we got out of the car together, I thought to myself that I should talk to Sarah properly once she's back. In the evening, Sarah returned home with Kimberly. She even bought some deli food for dinner and said, "Call me if anything happens," before leaving. She was like a superhero. I silently jumped for joy in my mind. Having dinner with the deli food that Kimberly bought, I felt unusually well. So I decided to talk to Sarah again. Can we talk a bit more about the other day? I asked, and Sarah nodded seriously. Can you talk to the baby in my belly, Sarah?
Yes.
Sarah nodded firmly. It was hard to believe, but I felt that there was no falsehood in her words. Then can you tell me again what the baby is saying?
Well, the baby is scared of Daddy.
Why?
Daddy is trying to hurt us on purpose and separate Mommy and the baby. So the baby is clinging to Mommy with all his might.
I was at a loss for words at this revelation. Her words, though clumsy, connected the dots I'd been feeling. Everything that felt off might have been deliberately planned to harm the baby. Feeling this, I shivered.
Mommy, what's wrong? Are you in pain?
Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm okay. Seeing Sarah's tearful face, I hastily embraced my little girl. And I made a decision, in secret. I have to find solid evidence, or no one will believe this. The next day, after watching my husband leave for work, I pulled something out of the back of the closet. It was a baby monitor we used when Sarah was an infant. If this reveals what he's doing, if it showed what I feared. The thought was so frightening, but if it showed nothing, that would be okay too. With a small hope in my heart, I hid the camera behind a houseplant. Then, a few days later, I mustered up the courage to check it. I can't believe this. It's too awful. What was captured there was something unimaginable, enough to shatter my small hope. And then I made up my mind. I absolutely won't forgive this. A week or so had passed since I saw the footage. I left my daughter, Sarah, at my parents' home earlier in the day. Then I tidied up the entire house and prepared a perfect dinner before Mark came home. Mark, who finally came home, was surprised to see the lavish meal set on the table. What's going on? I could have made dinner. I can't let you do anything dangerous anymore. Huh? What? What do you mean? I didn't miss the flash of caution in his eyes. I mean exactly what I said. What have you been feeding your pregnant wife all this time? I don't get it at all. My health has improved significantly since I stopped eating your cooking for the past week. What's that supposed to mean? I had pretended to eat my husband's cooking and threw them all away. When I told this to my husband, he was slightly shaken. Also, when I checked around the house, I noticed the non-slip pad under the rug was missing, and the anti-tip device on the bookshelf next to the bed was removed. I got goosebumps when I found these. These weren't just targeted at our baby. It implied I was also a target. When I glanced at Mark, his mouth was twitching as he tried to force a smile. Now that I think about it, there was a time when body wash had spilled on the bathroom floor after shower, and things fell from shelves. If I'd fallen and hit my stomach, it would have been a disaster. Those are just coincidences, right? Maybe I just made a little mistake. I thought so too, until I saw this. I thrust my phone in front of his face, and when I played the footage recorded on the baby monitor, there was Mark talking on the phone with someone, and his voice was clearly recorded. I get it, but it's not going as planned. It's surprisingly hard to make a person disappear in an accident. Well, two people. It would be best if the baby in the belly could disappear too. Those words from the video sent chills down my spine no matter how many times I hear them. Watching Mark, he was shaking minutely and trembling in silence. Despite being wary, I continued to speak. The person on the phone is a woman, isn't it? Once I'm gone, you're talking about doing this and that. Things too disgusting to even mention. That's bullshit. You're spying on me like this? I'll sue you. How dare you? Do you even understand what you've done? Shut up. Just shut up. No longer able to find excuses, Mark, his face bright red, lost control and lashed out at me. Instinctively, I hunched over to protect my stomach. Just as I did, a loud bang sounded, and the next moment, I heard Mark scream. Landa, are you okay? Kimberly, thank you. I looked over with relief to find Kimberly, who easily subdued Mark and was laughing.
In fact, she's a strong woman who has won the national wrestling tournament multiple times. For the day, I had asked Kimberly to stand by in the next room just in case. Mark, pinned down by Kimberly, was already reddening his face and bellowing.
You think you're alive because of who? Me, right? Yet annoying demands to play with the kids and help with housework. If you all would just disappear, I could live freely. Just get lost for my sake, you idiot.
So that's what you think. But thank you.
Huh?
Actually, you just helped me a lot by self-destructing. Saying so, I thrust my phone, which was in call mode, in front of Mark. The call was to 911. Actually, it had been in this state for a little while before, so all of Mark's words had gone straight through to the police.
Please, not the cops.
Mark was struggling to escape, but Kimberly had him firmly pinned down and he couldn't move.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please, I apologize, forgive me.
That's not something you can get away with just by apologizing. What you were about to do?
Don't say such things.
While Mark was thrashing around, the sound of several footsteps and a voice saying,
We're coming in,
echoed, and the police officers entered through the door that was already unlocked. And in no time, Mark was taken away. Even on his way, Mark was pathetically clinging to me and pleading like,
Help me.
A subsequent investigation revealed the plan by Mark and his mistress. The objective was to eliminate me, who was in their way, so they could be together. Even if they failed to get rid of me, they were contemplating a story that the loss of our child due to my carelessness would lead to divorce. Moreover, if they could blame it on me, they thought they could claim compensation at the time of divorce. The sheer audacity of it all leaves me speechless. But even now, when I think about what could have happened, if I hadn't noticed anything, it still sends chills down my spine. Mommy, the baby is happy. She says she can always be by your side. When I went to pick up Sarah, she said that right away. Yes, I'm so glad. It's all thanks to you. I thanked my daughter from the bottom of my heart, and tears of relief flowed. Mommy, why are you crying? The baby is looking forward to meeting you. I'm also very excited. About a month after Mark's arrest, our divorce was finalized. And a few months later from that, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Sarah is overjoyed at her sister's birth and has now become a very reliable big sister.
My two brothers and I have been close since we were kids. There's my eldest brother, who we call John, my younger brother, whom we call Steve, and me, the only girl in the family, going by Lucy. We're all in our 30s now, and I'm confident that our bond is stronger than most siblings out there. Part of why we were so close is that our parents both worked, and we always had to work together to get by. None of us were exactly good children. We each had our own missteps. Our mother often had to come to school for each one of us, and we got scolded at times. John was by far the worst among us. He was infamous in our hometown for being a troublemaker, and didn't bother with things like studying. He was always just goofing off and getting into trouble. Steve and I were different. Maybe it was because we had a cautionary tale right in front of us, but we both managed to avoid causing too much worry for our parents. We didn't attend any after-school tutoring and didn't put in much effort, yet we were always in the top 10 of our class. We probably just knew how to play the system. Lucy and Steve are doing great in school. Can't wait to see what the future holds. Maybe you'll take care of me someday. Just because you're good at studying doesn't mean you're guaranteed a successful future. I'll be the most successful one among our classmates. You just leave it to me. Usually the ones who say that are the first ones to get married and settle down. I'm betting on Steve. Even if I become successful, I'm not going to take care of you. We'd always get in these fun discussions. John was sloppy but had a kind heart and strong core. Steve was careful and responsible in everything he did. And then there was me, always pushing forward without thinking too much about the future. We made a great trio. John enrolled in a public high school, but quit about half a year in and has been wandering around ever since. He never really had a stable job. He'd help out at his senior's auto repair shop or bars from time to time, just coasting along. Watching my brother like this, I felt a deep resolve to succeed, because I was the reason why John ended up in evening school. On the day I got into a traffic accident, my injuries were serious. John worried about me and rushed me to the hospital. Worrying and caring for me so much, he ended up quitting high school. Deep down, I feel guilty about that. So I can't help but think if I become successful, I can help get John's life back on track. Around that time, I was always thinking about the future, about the path to success and its shortcuts. What could I do that would interest John? It had to be something that he could easily get into. When I started high school, I wanted to save money, so I began working a part-time job. No matter what you do, I thought you always end up needing money, so I worked hard to save as much as I could. Steve, have you seen John lately? I haven't seen him at all. It seems like he hasn't been coming home recently. Just as I thought. That fool. I wonder what he's up to. I hope he's not getting into trouble. Surely, with a family waiting for him, he'd think twice before getting involved in something dangerous. John didn't come home for several months. To ease our shared anxieties, Steve and I gossiped about John. Then a few months later, John came home nonchalantly. Where have you been? At least contact us. We were all worried. I'm sorry. I've been super busy with my part-time job. If that's the case, just say so. Lucy and Steve have been worried too. Sorry. He told us that he had found a good job out of state where he stayed overnight and entrusted me with almost all of his earnings for the future. He asked me to combine it with the savings from my part-time job. I didn't understand the reason at the time, but he insisted, so I took care of the money. From there, John started to loaf around at home again without doing anything for a while. Even though he never got a full-time job, he started to work part-time occasionally, and our parents seemed content with that. After graduating high school, I wanted to study business administration thoroughly and decided to go to college. Fortunately, my excellent academic performance earned me a full scholarship, which was able to help my parents out a bit. My brother was also proud of me. Around that time, there was a change in John. John, how long are you planning on living like this? If you don't get a full-time job, you won't be able to marry the girl you like. Actually, there's a company that's been inviting me through a colleague, but I'm not sure. You have such an opportunity? What kind of company? Construction. It's the site where I went to work part-time a few months ago. I'm not sure if I want to do that for the rest of my life. It starts early in the morning. You should take it. If you have the opportunity, just go and give it your best shot. Being firmly pushed by me, John started working as a full-time employee the following week. It seemed to suit him better than expected, and contrary to our family's prediction, he continued without complaining or being late. Looking at John during this time, I decided to pursue a career in architecture. If I could establish a solid foundation in the only field that my brother, who had no higher education, had mastered, his future would surely be secured. While I was attending vocational school, I continued to work part-time and managed to save up enough money to buy a rather expensive car. Of course, I could do this because I was living with my parents all along, but even I was impressed with how much I was able to save. My mother was the one who understood my efforts to work hard to save money and supported me from behind the scenes. She always packed lunch for me during my vocational school days, so I wouldn't have to spend unnecessary money. She really was cheering me on. After graduating from vocational school, I joined a well-connected company to network, earned countless certifications, and slowly prepared for independence while building relationships. John, too, had been tirelessly committed to his job, so I was able to concentrate on preparing to start my own business. Eventually, I was able to establish my own company, but I didn't invite John to join at the time. I couldn't afford to both go under, so I decided to keep an eye on things for a while. I plunged into work with all the preparation I had done up until now, working frantically. The team I had assembled were all excellent and worked well, and they all followed my lead. We got off to a good start. It was a strong beginning. But around that time, John had moved out of our parents' house and started living alone, and I didn't see him that often. I myself was busy, and I couldn't keep in touch often, but a year after starting my business, I officially offered him a position. John, my company is finally stabilized. I have something else I want to do next. I want to expand the business more. So I want you to lend me your power. Can you help me? There's nothing I can do. I want you to become the president of the current company and take command. What? That's impossible for me. You need to look at who you're talking to. I'm seriously talking to you with full consideration. Besides the money you entrusted to me a while ago, I used part of it as capital when I started the company. I persuaded John and assigned him a secretary who seemed to get along with him to learn all the necessary things. In this company, I became the chairman and took on the role of supporting John. Then I started preparing for the next venture. It was my original dream, to create mini cafes that are so cute and photogenic that they won't lose to anywhere else. This had actually been a dream of mine since childhood. I was excited to start without compromising anything, studying a lot about the restaurant industry. At that time, my younger brother Steve began studying to become an architect. This was also an offer I made. Buildings designed by Steve, with John in charge of construction. This was the ideal shape. Of course, it's my job to ensure we have enough work to sustain us. I have been preparing to actualize this plan in the near future. Around the time John stepped into his second year as the president of the company, he abruptly announced that he was getting married. Who is she? John doesn't seem to have the best judgment. I'm worried. I'll introduce her to everyone soon. We're looking forward to it. John getting married. I must confess, I felt more sadness than joy. We had always been the three of us, so the intrusion of a stranger gave me a sense of discomfort. But I knew I had to pull myself together and celebrate my brother's happiness. Later, when we had a gathering with both families, I met his girlfriend named Bella. I didn't oppose their marriage and things seemed to progress smoothly, but I felt an aversion towards her from our first interaction. Bella, I'm Lucy, John's sister. Please take good care of my brother. It's so nice to have a sweet sister. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. Okay. Since I'm going to be the wife of the eldest son, the president of the company, you'll have to go through me from now on, okay? Bella was the same age as John. She was working in an administrative role at one of our client companies. Her first impression was that she was a determined and assertive woman. Honestly, I thought our perspectives were a bit misaligned, and she was not my type. However, I did think that such a woman might be a good match for the somewhat naive John. Steve felt the same way, but we both decided to support their marriage for now. She seems a bit stern, but if John loves her, we'll support you guys. Good luck and be happy. Thanks, Lucy. A few years ago, I couldn't have thought about marriage, and nobody would have even approached me. From then on, I was running around due to the new work we had started, and my days were quite busy. As for John, he was busy preparing for the wedding, partly because Bella wanted to have the ceremony sooner rather than later. And before we knew it, the wedding day had arrived. I hadn't seen Bella, let alone John, since the day we had met both families. John, long time no see. Sorry I've been too busy to make time, but today I'm here to enjoy. Today, at least you can relax and enjoy the food and drink. John getting married. I can't help but feel a little sad. We three were able to chat and laugh together for a little while before the ceremony. Seeing John's happy face, Steve and I felt relieved. The ceremony began and I was enjoying a leisurely and delightful meal while chatting with Steve and my parents for the first time in a while. The seating arrangement at the reception hall had the employees from the company positioned diagonally behind our family. They were also lively, and it was during their conversation when the bride and groom went around the tables in order. John, Bella, congratulations on your special day. Thank you, and thanks to everyone for coming. Thank you all for coming. From now on, my husband's employees are my employees. I expect you all to work hard for me. I couldn't believe my ears. In the middle of the wedding ceremony, what could this bride be saying? Thinking about that, I couldn't help but retort. Bella, the employees are strictly the people of my brother's company. They are not your employees, right? Oh, I'm well aware of that. My cute, meddlesome sister-in-law will be my maid from now on. With that, she laughed in a crude manner. Because everyone sitting nearby could hear her clearly, the atmosphere became chilly for a moment. The next moment, all the employees burst out laughing. What? I'm going to be the wife of your CEO. Are you making fun of me? Bella, stop it. Bella, are you aware of who our chairman is? Huh? Chairman? I wasn't introduced to such a person. I don't know. It seemed that John hadn't explained it to her, and she was ignorant of the fact and being rude to me. To everyone who knew the truth, it was natural for them to laugh at her. The reception hall had already become quiet, and the atmosphere had completely changed from the festive mood it had been. I never thought you'd be the type to say such things in a place like this. I'm disappointed. Huh? I'm marrying you, the CEO, and I'm becoming the wife of the most important person. Isn't that natural? The reason I'm standing in this position today is all thanks to Lucy. She is the one who started the company and made me the CEO. Everything is Lucy's doing. The chairman is my sister. What? What is that? I was not told about this. She realized that she was the only one who didn't know the truth and was completely furious. No matter what she was thinking inside, she should have gone through this reception with a smile. I'm sorry, but knowing your true feelings, I've changed my mind. Please consider this marriage as if it never happened. John, that's a bit too much. I just lack judgment. My apologies, everyone. John bowed deeply to the people in the hall. The wedding ceremony ended abruptly and people dispersed. I later heard that she had lived in poverty since she was a child. She apparently told her colleagues that she would marry a rich man and lead a comfortable life. When she met John, she seemed determined to achieve that ideal life. After the ruined ceremony, Bella bowed her head many times, pleading with John to reconsider, but John firmly stated he would never marry her and sent her away. While they were dating, Bella always appeared to respect and act quietly around John. But seeing her intimidating attitude towards others surprised him. He told me that he couldn't trust women and planned to focus on his job for the time being. His dedication to work increased and he started to do better and better. And my dream of expanding the number of our shops steadily came true. And Steve successfully passed his exam and became a proud member of our company. However, despite the professional success that all siblings have achieved, we are all still single, a bit of a sad situation. I remember when the three of us gathered together after a long time. Do you have someone in mind to marry, Lucy? I enjoy my work and I can't think about marriage or having children yet. Me too. If we're happy now, that's all that matters. I don't want to get married either. So how about we build a house? John can come back and we can all live together. Caught up in work, Steve's suggestion surprised me for a moment. Over the years, we've been so focused on ourselves, it's time we repaid our parents and started looking after them. While the company's on track and has taken shape, we still need to work hard before we can declare it a success. Building a home as a base and starting from there together isn't a bad idea. I could easily agree with Steve's idea. Steve, that's great. What a great idea. Right? Steve, you handle the design. Lucy, you find the land. And I'll build a magnificent house. This was exactly the situation I had dreamed of, to achieve something with the three of us. We've been doing it since we were kids, but I always hoped we could continue this way into adulthood. My brothers and I. At that moment, I felt like there was nothing to fear in life ahead. Even if I don't get married or find a partner, I have strong allies. I'm sure I can continue to enjoy what I want to do with them. That baby is crying so loud. I heard the unmistakable sound of a lock clicking. My husband had locked me in the storage shed with our 3-month-old daughter. Outside, snow was falling and the cold was biting. Please open the door! I banged on the door and shouted, but there was no response. Soon, I heard the sound of a car starting from the driveway next to the shed. It seemed my husband had left. The shed, located on the north side of our yard, never got any sunlight and had no heating. It was freezing. How could he lock up his own daughter, just 3 months old, in such a place and leave? I felt his cruelty and was terrified. After waiting for a while, my daughter, who had been sick with a cold since yesterday, began to shiver. Her cries grew weaker. I have to save her, no matter what. In my desperation, I searched for a way out. My name is Lisa. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I met my husband Dennis at work, and we've been married for 3 years. When the younger and handsome Dennis asked me out, I felt like I was dreaming. I lost my parents in a car accident when I was 5 and was raised by my grandparents. They passed away just as I started working, leaving me all alone. Dennis had also lost his parents to illness. Maybe our similar backgrounds brought us closer. We began our life together in the house Dennis inherited from his family. It took a while, but last year I finally got pregnant, and now we have a 3-month-old daughter named Ellie. Our marriage and Ellie's birth should have been the happiest moments of our lives. But I had no idea that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Dennis was always kind, working hard, and we had happy days. The only concern was his love for video games and the amount of money he spent on them. But he wasn't into gambling or drinking, so I thought it was okay. I believed that once we had a child, he would change. But when I told Dennis I was pregnant, his reaction was unexpected. I'm pregnant. Really? Wow. He looked uncomfortable and finally said, "I'm not really good with kids." I was disappointed. I thought he would be happy. But once he sees our child, he'll surely find her adorable. But Dennis didn't. After a difficult labor, when I finally gave birth, I was over the moon with love for our daughter. But Dennis looked at her and muttered, "She looks like a monkey." He neither held our baby nor comforted me after the birth. Instead, he seemed more interested in something else. "Now that we have a child, we'll need money. So I searched the house and found this." My husband excitedly pulled out a banking card. It was the one that held the insurance money I received when my parents tragically passed away in a car accident. My grandparents had kept it safe for me, and aside from my college tuition, I hadn't touched it. There was about $30,000 on it. I didn't even know about this card until after my grandparents passed away. This money felt like it was in exchange for my parents' lives, so I kept it aside for emergencies. "Why did you have this? Why didn't you tell me about this? It's a lot of money." "It's from my parents' insurance. It's not something to brag about." "With this much, we can splurge a bit. Let's buy a car. I've always wanted a sporty one." Dennis started listing other things he wanted, like gaming consoles, assuming he'd use the money. "Wait, I don't want to use the money for that. It's our money, right? As a couple, let me use some. I want to save it for emergencies. We don't know what the future holds." We argued about it, but after a while, it seemed like Dennis understood. "Fine, but I'll manage it while you're in the hospital. Give me the PIN." Something told me not to share the PIN with Dennis. No matter how much he insisted, I didn't. He stormed out of the room, sulking like a child, and never came back to visit. When I was discharged, Dennis wasn't there. I had to carry my baby and luggage alone and took a taxi home. But things got worse at home. Every time our daughter cried, which is normal for babies, Dennis would shout, "She's so noisy." "She's just a baby." "That's why I hate kids. They're expensive and a hassle. Why did we even have her?" "That's harsh." "If you're the mother, make her stop." Dennis wouldn't even hold our daughter. I was alone, without parents or grandparents, and had to care for her by myself. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Late at night, while feeding my daughter, I often held back tears. People change when they know there's money. Dennis started skipping work and became irresponsible. "We have money, right?" became his catchphrase, and he just lounged around playing games. "Why aren't you working? You can't just keep taking days off. You're always home." "I just had a baby. If you want me to work, I will when she's older." "We have money. Let me use it." "It's what my parents and grandparents left for me. It's not shared property." We fought daily about money. Our daughter, sensing the tension, cried constantly. 3 months after she was born, Dennis quit his job. One evening, our daughter, who had been feeling unwell, started crying. My daughter, who had been suffering from a cold and had had a fever since the day before, started to get upset and cry. "She's so loud." "She's sick and has a fever. Make her stop." I tried to soothe her, but she cried louder. "That's it." In a fit of rage, Dennis dragged us into a storage shed in the freezing winter. "Stop it!" I heard the lock click. "Open the door. Ellie has a fever." If we stayed in this cold shed, something terrible might happen to Ellie. I banged on the door, pleading, but Dennis wouldn't open it. Then he made a shocking demand. "Give me the PIN for the banking card." "What?" Tell me and I'll let you out. I can't. Then stay in there with Ellie forever. The shed was located on the north side of the yard, a place that never saw sunlight and lacked any heating. It was chillingly cold. The thought of locking up a 3-month-old baby in such a place, I felt the cruelty of my husband and became terrified. Right now, my daughter's life is more important than money. Reluctantly, I decided to comply with my husband's demand to get out of the shed. Okay, I'll tell you the pin, just open this. Tell me the pin first, then I'll open it. I was hesitant, but I decided to trust him. However, as soon as I told him the pin, I heard him laughing, followed by the sound of a car driving away. Dennis had left. I've been tricked. I felt weak at the knees and crouched down, holding my daughter. Still, a tiny hope remained that he might change his mind and come back. To make matters worse, my daughter, who had been sick and feverish since the day before, began to shiver. I was only wearing a thin outfit, and even wrapping my daughter in a blanket didn't warm us up. The cold was biting, and my teeth started chattering. Despite my efforts to keep warm, the cold only intensified. Ellie's cries grew fainter, and her face turned pale. I can't wait any longer. I need to do something. Looking around, I spotted something. There! In the corner of the shed was an old, tarnished baseball bat. I used it to hit the shed door repeatedly. A small gap appeared, but it wasn't enough to unlock the door. Snow started to seep in through the gap. Help! Someone, please! I kept shouting through the gap. Are you okay? What happened? After a while, Mrs. Rothery from next door noticed and brought a crowbar from her house. She managed to pry open the door. Mr. Rothery, seeing my shivering daughter, immediately drove us to the hospital. Once there, the nurses took my daughter for tests and treatment. Seeing my worried face, Mr. Rothery comforted me in the waiting room and shared his story. His ex-wife had a controlling husband who would get violent and abusive when things didn't go his way. Even if Dennis didn't hit me, locking us in a freezing shed was life-threatening. Such actions could escalate, and he advised me to be careful. I decided I couldn't stay with such a dangerous man and planned to leave. Mr. Rothery advised me to act quickly. I left my daughter with Mrs. Rothery and went back home. Dennis wasn't home. As I was packing, I noticed my cash card was missing. Then I found some documents sticking out of Dennis's bag. What? He planned this far ahead? I'll never forgive him. Furthermore, when I returned to the hospital and saw the drastic change in my daughter's condition, I decided not to just flee, but to take action against my husband. The next morning, he called. Is the kid behaving now? In a cold voice, I replied to his mocking tone. Our daughter has passed away. What? He seemed shocked. She developed pneumonia because you locked her, already sick with a cold, in that freezing shed. Despite the treatments, she didn't make it. That's a lie, right? It's your fault. I'm reporting this to the police. I could sense his panic over the phone. I didn't mean for that to happen, I swear. His excuses were futile. I don't want to talk to you right now. I'll handle Ellie's funeral. We'll discuss things later. When I confided in Mrs. Rothery about wanting to take action against my husband, she introduced me to a lawyer. We agreed to meet at the lawyer's office. 3 days later, I sat face to face with Dennis at his attorney's office. I'm sorry about Ellie. I never intended for her to die. It's too late for apologies. Plus, you've been quite busy these past days. I began laying out the evidence I had gathered over the past 3 days. You charged $30,000 on games using my cash card, withdrew the $10,000 limit from the bank ATM, and even started the process to buy a $50,000 car. Do you even care about being a father? I can't be with someone as dangerous as you. I want a divorce. If we divorce, I'll be at a loss, right? A loss? Well, if we part ways, you won't get this. I placed the document I found in his bag on the table. It was a life insurance policy with Dennis as the beneficiary. You were after my money and my life. No, I just wanted us to enjoy life together. But secretly taking out life insurance on me and locking me in the shed could be seen as an attempt on my life. What? The lawyer beside me nodded in agreement. He explained to Dennis that locking me in the shed and the cold and unauthorized withdrawals were crimes. Dennis seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, his face turning pale and his body shivering. Lisa, please, don't go to the police. Aren't we a couple? You didn't listen when I begged you to let us out of the shed. I'm sorry. I truly regret it. I want a divorce. I'll also be claiming the money you spent from my bank card, compensation from the divorce, and child support in a lump sum. His eyes widened. Child support? Why? Because it's needed to raise Ellie. But she's gone, right? Ellie barely survived. What? Why did you lie? My daughter was in critical condition, connected to numerous tubes. Seeing her like that broke my heart, but she miraculously pulled through. I had hoped that by lying about her death, he might show some remorse, but it only revealed his true colors. I quit my job. I can't pay that much. Please! He started crying and begging. You could do something like that to protect yourself. I wanted you to protect me and my daughter too. I won't let you. Don't say that. Please help me. But I pushed him away and left everything to the lawyer. We divorced, and I reported him to the police. Dennis ended up in prison. After his release, he sold his family home to pay me the $40,000 he spent, plus compensation and child support totaling $170,000. Apparently, he borrowed the rest from shady sources and is now forced into hard labor. I bought a secondhand house in the suburbs for my daughter and me, and found a job. We live happily in a community where neighbors care for us, and my daughter is growing up healthy and strong.
When I arrived at daycare, the same old mom friend spotted me and started with her sarcastic remarks as usual. Oh, your husband's with you today? He must have a lot of free time on his hands. I live in a different world than you low-income people. It's truly unpleasant to see people like you. That's when the principal came over with a pale face, but her harassment wouldn't stop, even with the principal's intervention. Why is someone like her at this daycare? I want her to leave. My husband calmly took out his business card and greeted her respectfully. My wife and daughter are always in your care. The woman hastily accepted the business card and fled the scene. My name is Matilda. I live happily with my kind husband and 3-year-old daughter. I met my husband when I was a college student. We were both in the business department and had many overlapping classes, and we naturally became friends. I never understood how I became friends with him, as he was always cheerful and popular with everyone. I was plain looking and not good at speaking in public, so I never thought I'd be the type of person to get along with him. Whenever I said this, he would gently tell me, "You can have more confidence in yourself." His words helped me many times, and even a shy person like me made wonderful friends and enjoyed my college life. Gradually, he became a significant presence in my life. It probably started as admiration, but it slowly turned into affection. Unbelievably, he had feelings for me too. We began dating in our sophomore year and started living together 3 years into our working lives. From that time, I began to feel, I want to be with this person forever. So we rented a slightly larger, beautiful room when we moved in together. The time we spent discussing things like sunlight, kitchen positions, and furniture designs was also a lot of fun, and I still remember it occasionally. Later, we got married, and were blessed with a beloved daughter 2 years after. Our daughter is very active and good at communicating with other children, even at a young age. She can invite various children to play together. As I said earlier, I'm shy, so she probably takes after her father. Both my daughter and husband have beautiful smiles, and people naturally gather around them. My husband joined his father's company, and now he's taken over as CEO. At first, people questioned if he got the job through connections, and it was tough for him. But watching his honest and constant effort, people's perceptions of him gradually changed. His wonderful traits, like talking to everyone without discrimination and always being considerate of those around him, have remained the same since we met in college. Even as his position changed, my husband's attitude never did. That's why he's admired by everyone at the company, always at the center of it all, a reflection of our daughter. I love and respect both of them so much. But what about me? I'm trying my best, but I can't seem to gain confidence and end up feeling anxious. And it shows on my face. My husband and daughter always seem to sense when I'm feeling down and encourage me. Words from my husband like, "You can have more confidence in yourself," or my daughter's, "I love you, Mom," have been my salvation. When my daughter started going to daycare, the mothers living nearby, who had children of the same age, taught me various things. Thanks to them, even Shy Me was blessed with mom friends at daycare. We've been living in the same place since we moved in together, but one day, because of my husband's situation, we had to move, and our daughter had to go to a new daycare. It's sad to leave this town where we have so many good friends, but it can't be helped. We were determined to do our best in the new place as a family of 3, and I was a bit worried if my daughter, who had to suddenly change daycares, would fit in well. But now, every day, my daughter goes to daycare happily, even after the change. Seeing her make friends so easily in the new place, I was impressed. It seems that my worries about her fitting in were unnecessary. On the other hand, I was struggling to make mom friends at the new daycare. It seemed like I was the one who should have been worried. I was almost in despair at the towering wall before me, wondering if building relationships from scratch in an unknown place could be this hard. That's when Claire came to my rescue. Claire's daughter was the same age as mine, and they were in the same group. To me, someone who finds it hard to initiate conversations, Claire was like a savior. But, "Good morning, Matilda." "Good morning. Wow, you look fabulous in that outfit today." Claire was always wearing dazzling clothes. Not just that, she also carried a high-end designer bag. "Really? This is a new dress my husband bought for me." At first, we just made small talk. But gradually, Claire began to belittle me daily, one-upping me about education, her husband's income, children's activities, friends' professions, and more. With no other mom friends, I was becoming Claire's daily target, and I didn't know what to do. I was laughed at for my terrible outfits, or ridiculed. "You carry the same bag all the time. Is that the only one you have?" To be honest, it was a considerable strain. But time passed, and I couldn't confide in anyone. And today, Claire found me and approached me again. "Matilda, you look so casual again today," she said, laughing at me with a snort. Then, as if remembering, she asked, "So what does your husband do, Matilda?" "My husband is the president of a company that delivers car parts to factories," I was about to tell her. "At the factory?" when she interrupted. "Oh, factory work. That must be a low-income, tough job every day." Claire assumed it was factory work and cut me off. First of all, calling people working in factories low income was rather inappropriate, I thought. I really don't like Claire. And I was wondering why she always acted as if she was mocking people. According to what I heard, Claire is apparently the daughter of the daycare owner. And because of that, nobody dared to stand up to Claire. So she was free to do as she pleased. I used to think that I could endure the minor discomfort I felt, but Claire's harassment escalated, day by day, finally affecting my daughter as well. "Don't get close to Matilda's family. They're poor and don't earn much." That's what she spread around, isolating my daughter and me. She might have been going around telling the children, "You can't play with her." My daughter was always able to make friends with various children, but this time she couldn't, and she felt down. "Nobody wants to play with me anymore." When she said that, I was tormented by not knowing what to do to help her, even though I wanted to. I want to protect my daughter. However, with Claire doing whatever she wants to us and everyone avoiding us, what can I do? I was afraid to take action, thinking that if I sought help from teachers or other mothers, the situation might worsen. Above all, I was infuriated and felt pathetic that I could do nothing for my daughter on my own. At that time, there was one mother who talked to us without caring, but she too ended up being harassed by Claire. And the other mothers distanced themselves from us even more. I thought I shouldn't cause trouble to the other mothers, and I couldn't say anything. Meanwhile, taking advantage of my inability to do anything, Claire would daily taunt us. If it were just me, I could bear it, but I can't leave things as they are if it's affecting my daughter. It's a situation that must be dealt with as soon as possible. Finally, I consulted my husband about the incidents at daycare and the awkwardness that had arisen. He said, "It must have been hard, thank you for telling me," and suggested that we go pick her up together from now on. Indeed, going together does seem to ease the burden a bit. Although I felt bad for my busy husband, I couldn't thank him enough for creating time for us with a smile. "Matilda, you're taking on too much alone. You can rely on me and everyone around us." At those kind words, the tension I'd been feeling lately gave way, and tears flowed. The very next day, my husband and I went together to pick up our daughter. I wanted to avoid making our daughter feel uncomfortable, so I had told my husband that even if Claire said something, he should not argue back or raise his voice. "We're just going today to see what the situation is like. That's our feeling about it." Maybe just the fact that my husband is with me will change Claire's attitude. When we arrived at the daycare, as usual, Claire spotted me and made a sarcastic comment. "Well, your husband is with you today. You must have a lot of free time." She didn't care that my husband was right next to me. The mothers and teachers around us looked taken aback by the scene. Then Claire abruptly started talking about herself. "I live in a different world than people like you." Apparently, Claire was raised by strict parents and had been treated with great care since she was a child. She had been sternly disciplined to choose friends and lovers based on education and income. "That's why I find people like you utterly displeasing. She should just leave us alone if that's the case." Just as I was thinking that, the principal, looking pale, came over, as if he had been called by someone. If Claire's mother is the owner, could the principal be a relative? "Claire, stop it." Even when the principal tried to calm her, Claire's harassment didn't stop. "Why do I have to be in the same daycare as these people? I want them out." Once again, she berated us, saying my clothes were shabby or that my husband's job was in low-skilled jobs, hurling insults one after another. It was at that moment when my husband could no longer endure it and was about to speak to Claire. "Matilda's husband is the president of that company." When the principal announced that, Claire's face froze. And then my husband took out his business card and politely greeted Claire. "Thank you for always taking care of my wife and daughter." Receiving the business card, Claire seemed to panic more, and hurriedly left the scene. "I'm sorry, I wish I had noticed sooner." The principal said that. The principal told us that she was Claire's aunt. Claire had mentioned it earlier, and she confirmed that they came from a family that always valued titles. I was shocked by the sudden turn of events, but I felt genuinely relieved, thinking that the misunderstanding had been cleared up and that I wouldn't be criticized anymore. After a while, my daughter came running towards us from the school building, with a big smile on her face. "Mama, Pop-Up's picking me up today too!" She said that and jumped into our arms. Our daughter seemed very happy that both of us had come to pick her up. Seeing her smile, I thought that I wanted her to always be smiling. I wonder if we can get along well with everyone from now on. I wish I had talked to my husband sooner, I think now. And then the three of us held hands and went home. She used to tell me what happened at daycare on the way home, but she hasn't talked much about it lately. When we got home, our daughter said softly, "I wonder if my friends will play with me again if I call them." Hugging her after hearing that, I apologized. "I'm sorry I made you feel sad. I feel worthless that I couldn't do anything for her sooner." "Don't hesitate to tell me if you need help," my husband said, as if he knew what I was feeling. I thought about how much I was being supported by the two of them, and I cried. Since then, Claire hasn't been as assertive as before, and we've been living a peaceful daily life. Since that day, Claire seems to have been looked at coldly by those around her, and she appears uncomfortable. "Matilda, good morning." "Good morning." Since the harassment stopped, more mothers have been talking to me, and now I have made a lot of mom friends. I have been longing for these days, but I still want to get along with everyone. I mustered up the courage to talk to Claire. "Claire, good morning." At this, Claire's eyes widened in surprise for a moment before she replied in a small voice, "Good morning." There was a reason I wanted to talk to her this way. I heard from the teacher that my daughter and Claire's daughter often play together. Indeed, when my daughter comes home, she often tells me about playing and talking with her. And just the other day, she was invited to play at her house. I've heard that your daughter has been kind to mine. Thank you. Saying this, Claire looked down a little. May we come to your house to play sometime? I asked hesitantly, wondering if we might be refused. Then Claire slowly raised her face and said, My daughter invited you, so we are looking forward to it. And she smiled a little. I'm sorry for all the terrible things I've said before. I was very happy that Claire apologized and gladly accepted my daughter's invitation to play. With the help of our daughters, I was able to resolve the hard feelings with Claire. Since coming to the new daycare, I had been constantly troubled, but now my daughter and I are enjoying ourselves. Since that day, my husband has been picking up our daughter every day, except when he really can't. And she is delighted with that. On the way home, our daughter cheerfully tells us about her day, and we walk slowly while discussing things like, What would you like for dinner tonight? I want these days to continue forever. Thinking this, the three of us walk home, happily holding hands.
Don't come into my restaurant in those filthy work clothes. There's no seat for a construction worker like you, so get out.
The sushi restaurant master chef raised his voice, trying to kick me out. I was more astonished than angry. Understood. Then I'll have to cancel our deal for now. The master chef tilted his head at my words, then glared at me.
I don't know what you're talking about, but get out quickly.
Apparently, this master chef really didn't realize who I was. As I was about to leave, a certain person entered the restaurant and spoke to the master chef. I saw that person's face and instinctively shook hands. My name is Franny Elwood. I'm working hard every day at Elwood Remodeling Company, which I inherited from my father. I'm still inexperienced, but many customers praise me for being as skillful as my predecessor. Today, I managed to handle a large remodeling contract for the first time, and I finally gained confidence in myself.
Was it tomorrow that you were going to eat at the master chef's restaurant that was recommended by a customer?
Yes, but if Dad were here, it would be obvious that I came to check it out. This time, it's a reservation for me alone.
When this job is over, you'll treat me to a meal, right?
I couldn't help but laugh at my father's hearty laughter. I haven't been able to repay him for all the help he's given me, so it wouldn't be bad to do something like this once in a while. By the way, this customer was referred to me by the person who gave me the large contract the other day. That person was the first customer to entrust me with all the arrangements, so I must have caused some trouble, but he always cheered me up, saying,
A young and energetic girl is good.
Since it's a referral from such an important person, I have to work hard this time too. I must provide something satisfactory with even better skills than last time. I had already scheduled a day to give an estimate after taking a consultation from the customer over the phone. However, I have two peculiarities, and I always go to check the place in advance. One of those peculiarities is to see the actual condition of the customers using the restaurant. When it comes to estimates, we talk while sitting, and there may be habits and movement that I don't notice myself. To discern that, I deliberately go to check in advance of the estimate. And the other is not to reveal who I am during the inspection. If you're conscious of being watched, you cannot move naturally as usual. You would be nervous and you might try to move efficiently. From my perspective, wanting to repose by looking at the natural body, such small changes in movement were fatal. These 2 points make it very important for me to check in advance. Tomorrow is finally the important day for the inspection. I have consultations about remodeling from the other customers tomorrow, but I have left everything else to my father, except for one appointment. Since the restaurant reservation time is late, I should have plenty of time. I've heard that he's a skilled master chef from the customer who introduced me, and I can't wait. I haven't eaten sushi in a long time, and I was so happy that I was humming while working hard with the hand plane. The next day, I was in a rush, fearing I would be late for my reservation at the sushi restaurant. I had worn my work clothes to visit a client just in case,
and it might have been the right decision. The client who wanted to discuss a remodel was elderly, and I had to explain the same details repeatedly, taking up time until a family member living with them returned home. If I hadn't been wearing my work clothes, they might not have understood that I was from Elwood Remodeling Company. I had planned to change into casual clothes before going to the sushi restaurant, but there was no time for that. I wasn't dirty at all from today's consultation, and although my appearance might be a bit off, I had no choice but to go as I was. Besides, the restaurant was fully reservation only, so if I missed today, I wouldn't be able to visit for an inspection before the estimate. After some hesitation, I reluctantly headed to the sushi restaurant in my work clothes. A 30-minute drive. I barely made it on time. Opening the door to the restaurant, a female staff member noticed me with the sound of the bell on the door and was about to guide me when Master Chef's loud voice echoed through the restaurant.
Hey, don't bother showing her in.
The female staff looked surprised, her eyes wide, glancing back and forth between my face and the Master Chef's. I was also confused, not understanding why he suddenly spoke to me that way. Excuse me, I'm on time for my reservation. Is there any problem? Without even looking at me, the Master Chef opened his mouth.
Don't come into my restaurant in those filthy work clothes. It'll ruin the reputation of the place.
I admit it was wrong of me not to change out of my work clothes, but I didn't do anything dirty at work today, and there's no dress code here. Before I could finish, the Master Chef glared at me and snapped.
Excuses won't help. We don't have seats for construction workers here. You'll bother the other customers, so get out of my restaurant.
The Master Chef's rude words and snorting laughter made me angry. But I calmed down when I saw the confused female staff member. Starting a fight here would only cause trouble for the restaurant and other customers. I bowed slightly to the Master Chef. I understand your feelings. Then I'll have to cancel our deal for now. The Master Chef tilted his head, perhaps not understanding my words. He must be quite unintelligent, looking down on customers based on their profession. With a gesture, as if shooing away a bug, the Master Chef waved his hand.
Don't waste time talking nonsense, and you, don't just stand there. Get her out quickly.
The female staff member's shoulders shook, surprised by the sudden shift of blame. Seeing her face about to cry, I felt sorry for her and handed her a handkerchief from my bag. From what I could see, the Master Chef's intimidating behavior might be a daily occurrence. I was utterly disgusted and reached for the door to leave.
Sorry, dear customers. I apologize for letting an unpleasant pest into your sight and ruining your mood. The pest control is over, so now please enjoy yourselves.
My anger reached its peak at the Master Chef's triumphant laughter, and I turned around to face when I heard a voice from behind.
Oh, you are.
I turned to find Marginson, the first client I had ever handled. Sensing the strange atmosphere in the restaurant, Marginson asked if something had happened. Before I could answer, the Master Chef hurried over.
Sir, I'm sorry if I caused any inconvenience. There's nothing wrong. Besides, this customer is about to leave. Come, please have a seat here.
Wait, is Marginson your mentor? Master Chef? I was surprised when the Master Chef referred to Marginson as his mentor. Marginson nodded affirmatively to my question.
Yes, that's right. This guy was incredibly slow to learn. It took a lot of effort to make him competent. Well, now he's running his own restaurant. My proud protege.
Marginson laughed, and the Master Chef joined in with a forced smile. It seemed Marginson was unaware of the Master Chef's true nature. While he acted humbly towards his master, Marginson, it appeared that the sense of liberation from becoming independent had led him to adopt a careless attitude towards his customers.
By the way, I'm the one who introduced her to your shop. Thanks to your remodeling, Our work efficiency has improved significantly, and we're getting more compliments from the customers about the beautiful counter. Thanks for the great work.
Marginson takes my hand and shakes it, expressing his gratitude. I shake Marginson's hand back, feeling a bit shy. The master chef watches us with a pale face.
Wait a minute. Who is this girl?
The master chef's words made Marginson frown.
What do you mean by this girl? This person has helped me a lot. Didn't I just introduce you to this shop the other day? Isn't that why you came here today for a meeting?
About that, as of now, I have no dealings with this shop.
Wait, why?
Marginson is shocked by my words and raises his voice. He must not have expected this turn of events and wants to know why I stopped the transaction.
That is, I'll discuss it with this person later, so don't worry, Master. Please take a seat over here.
The master chef, finally realizing the gravity of the situation, tries to interrupt me, looking quite flustered. He makes a fuss, trying to pull Marginson away from me and guide him to his seat. I laughed inside at the master chef's desperate behavior as I explained to Marginson what happened earlier. Like I told Marginson, I took the request over the phone, so he probably didn't know I'm the daughter of Elwood Remodeling Company. But it's my fault for coming in work clothes.
I see. And then?
I thought that if I got involved with this shop, it might lead to big problems later on, so I decided to decline this time. At first, Marginson listens with a serious face, but by the time I finish speaking, his face turns bright red and he's trembling with anger. The master chef watches Marginson's reaction, his face turning pale, and he breaks into a cold sweat.
No way. Dear customer, it seems there's been a misunderstanding because of my poor explanation. Of course we have a seat ready for you. Please have a seat.
The master chef's desperate excuses are in vain, and Marginson heads silently towards the exit. The master chef with his large frame runs after Marginson, causing dust to fly, and I end up coughing. The master chef continues to try to calm Marginson's anger, but Marginson ignores him completely. After a few minutes of trying to appease him, Marginson finally speaks. The master chef brightened his face, thinking he would be forgiven. But the words from Marginson were cruel to him.
Don't ever call me your mentor again. If people think you're my protege, it'll ruin my reputation. I introduced you to someone special who helped me because you were struggling with changing the interior of your shop. Now I feel humiliated and terrible.
With a cold expression, Marginson spoke, and the master chef seemed to freeze. His movements completely stopped. He had been desperately apologizing, but of course Marginson wouldn't forgive him. Pushing aside the master chef who was blocking the door, Marginson left the shop. I didn't want to stay any longer, so I followed Marginson. On my way out, I let out the words I had been holding back. You only apologized to Marginson and never said sorry to me. You even acted like I misunderstood everything on my own. Instead of changing the interior of the shop, you should fix your personality first. My final words left the master chef utterly dejected, and he collapsed to his knees. I handed a little money to the female waitress as an apology for the commotion and finally left the shop. I had planned to indulge myself at the restaurant today, but my mood was ruined, so I decided to eat a lot at a cheaper place. I wanted to eat heartily rather than dine elegantly. I also told my father the name of the place we were going to and called him over. He seemed suspicious at the quick contact, but the moment he saw my face, he seemed to understand the situation.
It can't be helped. Today's on me,
he said, putting his arm around me and cheerfully patting my back. After we had eaten enough, my father asked what had happened. I hesitated for a moment, but gave in to my father's worried eyes and slowly began to tell him about the day.
It seems like you had a terrible customer.
My father is usually a strict person. His strictness comes from wanting me to take over the business properly. I've even been scolded at work for complaining. So being treated this kindly was a first for me, and I felt tears welling up.
But that master chef, if he picks a fight with Marginson, he won't survive.
What? Is he that great of a person?
Of course, his protege has opened many famous shops. Marginson's own restaurant is a place where celebrities sneak in, and you can't underestimate his influence in the industry.
I was astonished, not knowing that Marginson was such an important person. I had thought he was no ordinary person, but I never expected him to be such a big shot.
If you anger him, you might be shunned in the industry. The life of that shop might be short-lived.
Hearing those words, I thought the master chef was just unlucky, and I felt relieved that I had made the right decision to break off the deal at that time. A little while later, I heard from Marginson that the master chef's restaurant had gone out of business. Apparently, a customer who was present that day was furious and posted a video on social media of the master chef ridiculing me. The customer was in the middle of an important business dinner, and the other party was from a construction company. He posted the video with a caption saying,
"My credibility plummeted for choosing such an unpleasant restaurant."
And it went viral. People who saw the video identified the master chef's restaurant, and it spread further, with critical comments piling up in the reviews. Furthermore, the female waitress from that time apparently sued the master chef for harassment. It seemed my intuition was right, and she had been treated terribly all along. On top of that, once people in the industry heard that Marginson had cut ties with the master chef, they stayed away, and the master chef was forced to close down crying. All that was left for the master chef was compensation for harassment. Even if he wanted to restart in the same industry, regaining lost trust would not be easy. Marginson said he would overlook it if I forgave the master chef, but since there was still no apology, I politely declined. Given the situation, the master chef might come yelling that it's my fault before even apologizing. Well, if that happens, I'll just chase him away with the body I've built through daily workouts. As for me, since the work clothes I wore that day had the name of my shop on them, I received a series of consultation calls. People were impressed with how I carefully assessed customers and committed to my work. While the master chef was driven to ruin, that video turned out to be a blessing for me. Thanks to the video, my schedule is booked for several months ahead. With the increased income from the additional requests, I plan to take my father out for a meal this time.
My husband James is always busy with work, leaving me with all the chores and child rearing. I'm used to doing all the child care on my own, but one day our daughter fell seriously ill and we rushed to the hospital. Feeling helpless, I tried to contact James, who was supposedly on a business trip, but I couldn't reach him. I decided to call his office and was shocked by what I was told. Your husband is actually on paid leave. This must be a joke, right? He told me he was on a business trip. Was all his overtime a lie? I was convinced that James was cheating. Soon after, I found out who he was having an affair with. I can't forgive such a betrayal. I decided to bring them down to hell and started devising a plan. It won't be long until their true colors are revealed. My name is Ellie. James is a senior colleague at the company who I had a crush on. I have a colleague from my department named Nikki. Thanks to Nikki, I was able to start dating James. After marrying James, I got pregnant quickly and resigned from the company after giving birth. That's how our daughter, Daisy, was born. James's work became busier since my pregnancy, and I spent many days alone. Even after giving birth, his pace of work didn't change, and I was almost always taking care of Daisy alone. Nikki always comforted me on the phone when I complained. James used to be kind. James is working hard for the family now, so Ellie, you need to hold down the fort. When Nikki said that, it made me feel better, and motivated me to keep going. What about you, Nikki? You're madly in love with your boyfriend, right? Nikki answered my question happily. Yes, actually, we just got engaged. Really? Congratulations! Your boyfriend is the heir to that old, prestigious hotel, right? Congrats! Thanks. We haven't set a date yet, but the wedding will be grand. You must come, Ellie. Absolutely, I will. Nikki's boyfriend, Frank, is handsome, rich, and kind. The kind of guy everyone envies. He's nothing like James, who's always working. That sounds nice. As soon as I said that, Nikki scolded me. Don't say that! You got married before I did, so you're my senior. Plus, you have Daisy, don't you? You're right. I have a daughter. I need to try harder to be a better wife. After venting to Nikki and feeling better, I was able to get back to my chores and child rearing from the next day. One day, while preparing James's luggage for a business trip and sending him off early in the morning, I noticed Daisy's face was flushed. She seemed to be a bit feverish. She might have caught a cold or something. I decided to cancel going out and quietly stayed at home. Daisy's condition did not improve, and her fever kept rising as time passed. Maybe it would be better to take her to the hospital. By the time I started to prepare to go to the hospital, Daisy's temperature had risen to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Daisy had a seizure just as I was lifting her. Daisy! I hurriedly called an ambulance. We arrived at the hospital, and thankfully my daughter's condition stabilized, but she had to be admitted for the day just to be safe. Feeling unable to endure being alone, I called James in anxiety, but I couldn't get through to him at all. Perhaps his phone was off. Why at a time like this? That's it. I had an idea. If I contact his office, I might be able to get the number of where he is on his business trip. If there's someone accompanying him, they can pass the message. I called James's office. When I asked about his whereabouts, the person at the office told me in a puzzled manner. Your husband has taken a week off on paid leave from today. Huh? I ended the call in confusion. What on earth? Unable to stay put, I called Nikki. Ellie, what's up? Upon hearing Nikki's kind voice, I felt like bursting into tears. You see, I'm at the hospital now. Hospital? Daisy came down with a fever. She had a seizure and was admitted in an emergency. I tried to call James, but it seems his phone is off. And then, just as I was about to share what had happened at the office earlier, Nikki interrupted. Oh yeah, that's right. James is on a business trip in quite a rural area, so he must have a bad signal. Huh? I was momentarily lost for words. The person at the office said, James is on paid leave. There's no way Nikki, who works in the same department, wouldn't know about it. Looking back, Nikki seemed to know a lot about James's private life. Not only about James, but she also seemed to know conversations that took place at home that I had no recollection of sharing with her. At this point, I finally connected the dots. It wasn't my misunderstanding. Nikki and James were meeting behind my back. Even now, surely. Barely resisting the urge to confront, I asked Nikki for confirmation. Hey, Nikki, where are you right now? Where, you ask? At home. Could you come to the hospital now? I'm feeling anxious being alone. What? Right now? That's impossible. Why? Are you with someone? No, I'm alone, but I'm a bit tied up right now. I see. Sorry for asking too much. Then, could we do a video call? Seeing your face would probably make me feel better. A video call? But I don't have any makeup on right now. I've seen you without makeup plenty of times when we went on trips together. But... Nikki sounded flustered. She was extremely suspicious. Then I heard a familiar voice from the other side of the phone. "Nikki, stop talking on the phone and come over here." It was unmistakably James's voice.
Sorry, the TV was just left on.
Nikki hastily tried to cover it up, but I was not fooled. I can't believe those two have been betraying me behind my back. However, there's no point in confronting them now. I patiently endured and maintained my composure. "No worries, I didn't mean to disturb you while you're relaxing and watching TV. I'm just a bit shaken up, that's all. Talk to you later."
Yeah, I hope Daisy gets well soon.
Nikki ended the call with a relieved tone. A few minutes later, I received another call, this time from a panicked James. "Ellie, is Daisy okay?" "Huh? How do you know about it?" Well, you called my cell phone, didn't you? The only reason you'd call while I'm on a business trip must be about Daisy, right?" He's full of lies, despite knowing he'd heard from Nikki. I kept my cool and didn't point it out. Daisy had a high fever of 104 degrees and had convulsions. We called an ambulance and she's at the hospital now. "I see. And how's Daisy doing now?" "She's calm for now. The doctors recommended that she be admitted for observation today." "I see. That's a relief." "So, will you be coming home?" "Huh? No, I still have some work left." James's response was noticeably vague. "As long as she's stable now, that's a relief. The hospital will take good care of her, so I don't need to rush back. You've always been there for Daisy, Ellie. I trust you to handle things like always." He suddenly became talkative, desperately trying to justify why he doesn't need to return. Watching their behavior, I had an epiphany. For James, our family no longer mattered. The moment I realized that, my affection for him just drained away. Fine then, I won't think of him as my husband or Daisy's father any longer. I'll drag them both down to hell. I began planning to abandon James, but a simple divorce isn't enough. I'll take every penny of the compensation from James and Nikki. First, I needed evidence of their affair. Looking at Nikki's social media posts, she gleefully shared images of their upcoming dates and locations of past ones. In those pictures, glimpses of James's belongings, like his tie or wristwatch, were visible. They likely never suspected that I would scrutinize their online behavior to this extent. My anger towards them rekindled my spirits, and I was able to energetically nurse Daisy and gather evidence at the same time. The test results showed no issues, so Daisy was to be discharged the following day. While James was on his so-called business trip, he didn't once inquire about Daisy's test results. That solidified my resolution. I greeted James with a composed expression when he returned home with an innocent look on his face. "Welcome home." "I'm back." James glanced at Daisy. "Looks like you're doing well. You sure caused a fuss calling an ambulance." Holding back my anger towards James, I went about my usual chores and childcare duties. Then I called Nikki. "Hello, Nikki?"
"Ellie, how has Daisy been since then?"
I used to be grateful for Nikki's kindness, but now all I felt was deceit. But I couldn't afford to lash out here. Under the guise of making small talk, I probed Nikki for her recent happenings and future plans. I continued making preparations steadily and was about to add the finishing touches. One day, I invited Nikki to a cafe under the pretext that I had something to give her.
"Ellie, what do you want to give me?"
I handed her a voucher for a stay at an inn.
"Wait, isn't this for that super popular inn? What's up?"
"I got it as a gift, but it's expiring this weekend. I can't go because I'm worried about Daisy. Would you take it?"
"Really? Are you sure? Thanks."
As I expected, Nikki was ecstatic and accepted the voucher from me. A few days later, James told me he had another business trip over the weekend. How convenient. I can't believe everything is going according to my plan. Over the weekend, I left Daisy with my parents and arranged to meet a man at the nearest train station to the inn. His name is Frank, the fiancé of Nikki. I had been in contact with Frank on social media and let him know about my husband James and Nikki's affair. He agreed to cooperate with my plan. After meeting with Frank, we headed to the inn together. With a practiced hand, Frank was able to find out which room they were in and got a hold of the room key. Together, Frank and I stormed into the room. The ones there were James and Nikki, clad in bathrobes.
Why are you here?
Seeing me barging into the room, James shrieked. Nikki also widened her eyes in surprise. Frank, why are you here too? We're here to expose your affair. My words left them momentarily flushed, but my husband started to argue right away.
What are you talking about? I told you I'm on a business trip. She's just accompanying me.
Oh, it's pretty suspicious that you're sharing a room at a spa resort if you're supposed to be working.
Shut up. You, who quit your job, don't understand anything about work. Besides, entering a room without permission is trespassing.
Hearing this, Nikki also defended James. Yeah, it's strange that you just barged in. And how did you know about this room?
Frank calmly answered for me. We asked the front desk.
At the front desk? How could they just disclose guest information? This is a highly rated, high-end inn, yet they don't know how to handle their guests.
Can you stop insulting our inn?
Wait, our inn? Actually, the reason I got the voucher for this inn was because of Frank. This inn is run by his family. As the son of the owner, there's no way he couldn't get guest information from the front desk. Frank explained this to Nikki in a matter-of-fact way.
Don't you remember what you wrote on the guest registry? You put my name as your companion.
Oh! Nikki instantly showed a regretful expression.
The staff knows me, so they told me the room number and handed me the key. You probably hesitated to write down the name of a married man's mistress, but it's funny how predictable your actions were. Just like someone who'd have an affair despite being engaged.
Nikki couldn't argue back and just hung her head. I turned back to James. Don't think you can talk your way out of this now that we've caught you red-handed on your affair trip. I'm going to divorce you, and I'll be sure to ask for substantial alimony. Hearing this, James grimaced and retorted.
You really are an unpleasant woman. That's why I'm having an affair. I'd rather not have a woman like you, and I'll marry Nikki.
Upon hearing James's words, Nikki hurriedly lifted her head. Wait, what are you talking about? I have no intentions of marrying you, James.
What?
You were just a fling until I married. The one I truly love is Frank.
But didn't you invite me to this trip, Nikki?
I did it because Frank was busy. Nikki suddenly clung to Frank. Listen, Frank, this was just premarital jitters. The so-called cold feet. You get it, right? I promise I'll be a good wife after we get married. I'll work hard even if I have to take over this inn. So, please.
Frank coldly brushed off Nikki's pleas. A woman who cheats because of cold feet is bound to cheat again, claiming baby blues or midlife crisis. I have no intention of spending my life with such a foolish woman. It's out of the question to entrust her with the inn that has been passed down through generations.
You're saying you want to break up?
Yes, our engagement is off.
Facing them, who were pale as death, I declared, now that you and Frank seem to have sorted out your issues, let me state my demands. I will divorce James. Of course, I will have custody of Daisy. And you two will pay me a suitable compensation for the emotional distress. James will also pay child support for Daisy.
Compensation?
James and Nikki widened their eyes at the word. Well, it's only natural, isn't it? You cheat and you don't even have the decency to be prepared for the consequences? James started desperately trying to defend himself.
If you want compensation, you need legal proof. Just being together in an inn could be excused for work or something.
Such a shame. I have plenty of evidence. I laid out several photos showing their affair right in front of them. When I checked Nikki's social media, she posted a lot about places where they dated and planned dates. There were even dates that Frank didn't remember scheduling. Nikki, you even had the nerve to post about your dates with James. What a despicable character. But thanks to you, it was easy to track your movements and gather evidence. James seemed to give up after seeing the evidence. Suddenly, he clung to me.
Please, can't you reconsider? Daisy needs a father, doesn't she?
A father? A man who prioritizes dating his mistress over his own daughter's hospitalization isn't a father or anything else. We're better off without a father like that. All this time, you've left everything to me when it comes to Daisy. Don't you dare pretend to be a father now. As James fell silent, Frank seemed to remember something and said,
Oh, right. Since the guests were falsely registered under a pseudonym, that voucher is invalid. So, make sure you pay for your stay here.
Immediately, James and Nikki started arguing.
I'm not paying for this expensive place. I only came because Nikki said it was free.
What? This mess is all because you got cheating, James. Now my plan to marry into a wealthy family is ruined. You're responsible for this, so you should pay my compensation.
I've got my own compensation and child support payments. There's no way I can afford that.
Leaving the two to their ugly argument, Frank and I left the room. Frank, thank you for everything. I expressed my gratitude to Frank, who willingly cooperated in this plan.
No, I should be the one thanking you. It would have been a disaster if I'd married Nikki without knowing anything.
Frank also seemed to be able to receive compensation from Nikki. The affair between James and Nikki became known to their company, and they were both relocated separately to regional areas. The reasons for their transfers became rumors at their new locations, and their bad reputation spread quickly. Now, it seems they are both being ostracized from their communities. On the other hand, I was able to re-enter the workforce at a company introduced by Frank. Now that I have a substantial amount of compensation and child support, Daisy and I are living a happy life together. Even without a father, Daisy and I will definitely find happiness. I held my little girl's hand.